Hi, I'm Arabella, a storyteller on YouTube. This story is inspired by real relationship confessions and has been fictionalized for storytelling purposes. Names, details, and events have been changed. If this story moves you, or if you see a part of yourself in it, please like the video and subscribe to support my channel. Now, let's begin. I did not cheat because I hated my husband. I cheated because I started feeling sorry for myself. That sounds softer, doesn't it? Almost forgivable. I told myself I was lonely unseen, tired of being the woman who kept giving and getting less back. Then someone noticed me, and I mistook that feeling for love. But what I really wanted was not him. I wanted to feel chosen again, and by the time I understood that I had lost them both. My marriage was not terrible. That is the part that makes this harder to explain and harder to forgive. My husband was not cruel. He did not come home drunk. He did not call me names. He did not cheat first. He was not the kind of man people would point to and say, "Of course she left." He was decent, responsible, tired. And somehow that made my loneliness feel embarrassing. Because how do you explain feeling invisible beside someone who is not trying to hurt you? We had a normal life. Bills on the counter, groceries in the fridge, dinner at the same small table, laundry folded on Sundays, shows playing in the background while both of us sat on the couch. Close enough to touch but not really reaching for each other. He would ask, "How was your day?" I would say, "Fine." Then I would ask him the same thing. He would say, "Busy." And that was it. Two people giving each other the shortest possible version of their lives. From the outside, we looked stable, maybe even lucky. We had a house. We had routines. We remembered birthdays. We took polite photos at family gatherings. I still kissed him goodbye in the morning. He still texted me when he was running late. Nothing looked broken, but something was thinning. Not snapping, not exploding, just thinning day after day, until I could feel myself standing inside my marriage like a guest in a room where I used to belong. I told myself that mattered. I told myself being lonely in a marriage was its own kind of injury. And maybe it is. But an injury is not permission. I just did not want to understand that yet. I started using my loneliness as proof that I deserved more. Not out loud. I would never have said it that way. Out loud, I was still reasonable. Still calm. Still the wife who understood that marriage had seasons, that people got tired, that love could become quieter without disappearing completely. But inside, I was building a case. Every small disappointment became evidence. When my husband forgot to notice my new haircut, I told myself he no longer saw me. When he answered my story with, "That's crazy," while scrolling through his phone, I told myself he no longer listened. When he fell asleep before I finished talking, I told myself I was alone. Maybe some of that was true. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I did miss being touched like I was wanted, not just familiar. Maybe I did miss being asked questions by someone who actually waited for the answer. But loneliness changes shape when you feed it too much. At first, it is just pain. Then it becomes resentment. Then it becomes entitlement. I stopped thinking I miss my husband. I started thinking I deserve better than this. And once I believed I deserved better, I stopped asking whether I was still being fair. I did not think about how tired he was. I did not think about what I had stopped giving him. I did not think about how many times he might have reached for me and found me already turned away in my mind. I only saw my own empty places. And when you stare at your own emptiness long enough, anyone who offers attention starts to look like rescue. That was where the danger began. Not with another man. With the version of myself that decided my pain made me special. He did not make me fall in love right away. He made me remember what it felt like to be chosen. That was the hook. Not his face, not his voice, not anything dramatic enough to warn me. It was smaller than that. He remembered how I took my coffee after hearing it once. He noticed when I was quieter than usual. He asked if I had eaten lunch, and when I said yes, he looked at me like he knew I was lying. That kind of attention can feel innocent when you have been hungry for it. At first, I told myself he was just kind. Then I told myself he was just observant. Then I told myself there was nothing wrong with enjoying a conversation with someone who made me feel awake again. We talked about ordinary things: work, music, bad traffic, the kind of weather that makes everyone tired. Nothing that sounded dangerous if repeated out loud. But I did not repeat it out loud. That should have told me everything. I started saving parts of my day for him. A funny thing that happened. A frustration I did not want to explain at home. A thought I wanted someone to care about. And he always cared. Or at least, he cared in a way that cost him nothing. That is what I did not understand then. He did not live with the version of me who left dishes in the sink. He did not see me impatient, distracted, messy, unkind, exhausted. He did not have to plan bills with me, fold laundry with me, sit through family obligations with me, or love me on the days I had nothing charming to offer. He only got the version of me that arrived edited, lighter, softer, more interesting. And because he liked that version, I convinced myself he understood all of me. My husband had the whole book. The other man only had a highlighted page. But I was lonely enough to call that page love. The first lie was not, "Where are you?" The first lie was, "I can control this." I told myself I knew exactly where the line was. I told myself I could step close to it, feel wanted for a while, then return to my marriage untouched. I told myself married people were allowed to have private thoughts, private friendships, private little corners of themselves. But private is not the same as secret. I learned that slowly. The first time I deleted a message, I paused with my thumb over the screen, just for a second, long enough to know I should not be doing it. Then I did it anyway, and nothing happened. My husband did not walk in. My phone did not expose me. The ceiling did not collapse. Dinner still tasted normal. The house still looked the same. That was the dangerous part. The first lie survived, so the second one came easier. I started turning my phone face down at the table. I changed his name in my contacts to something boring. I told my husband I had errands when I really had coffee. I said I was tired when I was actually waiting for another message. Each step felt small because I only looked at the step I was taking, not the staircase. I called it talking. Then I called it friendship. Then I called it something I needed. Then, when I finally understood what it was, I had already trained myself not to look directly at it. Affairs do not always begin with one dramatic fall. Sometimes they are a series of tiny permissions. One message you should not answer. One compliment you should not keep. One meeting you should not hide. One lie that teaches you the world will keep spinning after you tell it. And once I learned that, I became less afraid of lying. Not because I was brave, because I was getting used to myself. I mistook novelty for love because novelty had never paid bills with me. It had never seen me sick. It had never stood in a grocery store aisle comparing prices while both of us pretended money was not tight. It had never sat across from me at the kitchen table with insurance papers, repair costs, and the kind of silence that only grows after years of being tired together. Novelty was light. That was why I trusted it too much. With him, there were no unfinished chores, no family obligations, no old arguments hiding under new conversations, no history that needed forgiving, no ordinary disappointments waiting in the sink. There was only attention. There was only the way my phone lit up and made my heart move before I could stop it. There was only the version of me who wore lipstick again, who laughed easier, who had something to look forward to that was not another appointment, another bill, another evening beside a man who had forgotten how to reach for me. I called that love, because calling it love made me feel less selfish. If it was love, then maybe I was not destroying something. Maybe I was discovering something. Maybe I was not betraying my husband. Maybe I was finally choosing myself. That is how I wrapped the ugliest part of me in words that sounded beautiful. But the truth is, newness has an unfair advantage. It does not have to survive routine. It does not have to be patient through sickness, boredom, stress, aging, resentment, or all the small, unromantic things that real love has to carry. Newness only has to arrive before the consequences do. And I was so hungry to feel alive that I mistook the spark for warmth. But a spark is not a home. It can light up a dark room for a second, or it can burn the whole thing down. I started to resent my husband because he reminded me I was wrong, not because he changed. Not really. He was the same man he had been before. Tired after work, quiet at dinner, forgetful sometimes, distracted sometimes, kind in ways that were easy to overlook because they were not dramatic. But once I started betraying him, his ordinary flaws became useful to me. If he forgot to buy milk, I told myself he never listened. If he came home late, I told myself I was not a priority. If he touched my shoulder while passing through the kitchen, I pulled away inside and told myself he only noticed me when it was convenient. I needed him to become worse in my mind, because if he stayed decent, then I had to face what I was doing to a decent man. So I edited him. Quiet became cold, tired became uncaring, responsible became boring, familiar became invisible. And every time I made him smaller, I gave myself more room to feel justified. That is one of the ugliest things about betrayal. You do not just hide the affair. You rewrite the person you are hurting until they look like someone who deserved less honesty from you. I did that to him. I took a man who had built a life with me, who fixed things around the house without mentioning it, who filled my gas tank when he noticed it was low, who still reached for my hand in the car sometimes. And I reduced him to the things he failed to give me, because the full version of him made me feel guilty. The full version of him made my excuses collapse, so I stopped looking at the full version. I only looked at the parts that helped me keep going. And the more I lied, the more annoyed I became when he trusted me. That was the worst part. His trust started to feel like pressure. When he kissed me goodbye, I felt trapped. When he asked if I would be home late, I heard suspicion even when there was none. When he said love you, I answered automatically, then hated him for making me say it. But he was not forcing me to lie. I was choosing to. And because I could not stand the weight of that choice, I tried to make him responsible for it. I told myself he pushed me away. But the truth was, I needed him to be the villain, because I could not bear being the only one in the room. When my husband found out, the first thing I did was try to look less guilty, not become honest, not protect him, not give him the truth cleanly because he deserved at least that much. I tried to manage the damage. It happened because of a message. One stupid message that appeared on my phone while it was charging on the kitchen counter. I had been careless, or maybe I had just gotten comfortable. That is what lying does when it works too many times. It makes you mistake survival for safety. My husband was making coffee. I was upstairs changing clothes. The phone lit up. By the time I came back down, he was standing beside the counter holding the mug in one hand looking at my screen. He had not touched the phone. He did not need to. The message was short enough to read from where he stood. I knew from his face that he had seen it. I said, "It's not what you think." He looked at me then, and I hated myself immediately because even in that moment I had chosen the most cowardly sentence possible. He set the mug down carefully. What do I think he asked? I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. He waited. That was worse than yelling. If he had yelled, maybe I could have cried. Maybe I could have made the room loud enough to hide in. But he just stood there, giving me space to tell the truth. And I used that space to search for a better version of myself. I said I was lonely. I said it had not started that way. I said I never meant to hurt him. He nodded once, like he was listening to a weather report. Then he asked, "Did you mean to hide it?" I stopped, because that question left me nowhere to go. I had not meant to hurt him. Maybe that was true, but I had meant to hide it. Every deleted message, every fake errand, every smile I tucked away before walking through the door, all of that had intention in it. He asked how long. I said, "Not long." His eyes moved to my phone, then back to me. Try again. And that was when I understood. He was not asking because he knew nothing. He was asking to see whether I would keep lying after being caught. I had called it loneliness. He was calling it what it was: a choice. I ran to the other man because I thought he would catch me. That is embarrassing to admit now. But after my husband found out, after the quiet questions, after the look on his face that made every excuse sound cheap, I still had one selfish little belief left. I thought there was someone waiting for me on the other side of the wreckage. I thought if my marriage was over, then maybe the affair had to mean something. It had to. Because if it did not, then I had destroyed my life for a feeling that could not survive daylight. So I called him. He did not answer the first time, or the second. When he finally called back, his voice was careful in a way I had never heard before. Not warm. Careful. I told him my husband knew. There was a pause. Then he said, "What exactly does he know?" That should have told me everything. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm coming over." Not, "We'll figure this out." What exactly does he know? I sat in my car outside a grocery store, gripping the phone like it was the last solid thing in my life, and I realized he was not worried about my heart. He was worried about the blast radius. I said, "He knows enough." He sighed. Then he said he needed time. Time. That word sounded so different coming from him. When we were hiding, time had been something we stole. 10 minutes in a parking lot. 1 hour after work. A weekend message my husband would not see. But now that I needed him to stand in real time in consequences in the mess we had made, he suddenly wanted distance from it. He said he never wanted to break up a marriage. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because men can stand in the fire with you and still act surprised when something burns. He said things had gotten complicated. He said he cared about me, but he had to think. He said this was a lot. And with every sentence, I watched the version of him I had loved disappear. Maybe he had never existed. Maybe he had only been possible when I was a secret. When I was a message he could answer when he wanted. A lunch he could leave. A woman with a husband at home, which meant he never had to become one. I had mistaken his attention for devotion. But attention is easy when there are no bills, no shared calendar, no family explaining, no lawyer emails, no broken spouse, asking questions in a kitchen. He did not love the woman standing in the aftermath. He loved the woman who made him feel chosen without asking him to choose anything back. And now that I had consequences in my hands, he wanted me to hold them alone. That was when I finally understood what I had traded for. Not love, not rescue, not a future. Just a mirror that made me look wanted until the glass cracked. I lost both men, but before I lost either of them, I lost the ability to tell myself the truth. That is where it really started. Not in his car, not in the messages, not in the first kiss. It started the first time I looked at my loneliness and decided it made me different from other people. More wounded, more deserving, less responsible. I wanted my pain to mean something, so I used it as permission. Permission to answer the message. Permission to hide the coffee. Permission to compare a man who saw only the polished version of me with a husband who had lived beside every unfinished, tired, ordinary part of me. I called it connection. I called it chemistry. I called it finally being seen. But sometimes being seen by someone new only feels powerful because they have not stayed long enough to see all of you. My husband had. He had seen me impatient, sick, ungrateful, messy, quiet. He had seen the version of me that was not easy to desire, and he still built a life with her. The other man saw the version I brought out for him. The lighter one. The interesting one. The one who did not come with bills, routines, family history, or consequences. And I called that love because it made me feel less ashamed. When my husband left, I told myself I had lost my marriage. When the other man pulled away, I told myself I had lost my future. But the truth is, I had lost myself much earlier. I lost myself every time I made my husband smaller so my betrayal could feel less cruel. I lost myself every time I confused guilt with inconvenience. I lost myself every time I said, I deserve to be happy while choosing something that would destroy someone else. Maybe loneliness explains how I got there, but it does not excuse what I did once I arrived. That is the part I live with now. Not every strong feeling is love. Sometimes it is just hunger. Sometimes it is just escape. Sometimes it is just the newest person touching the oldest wound. And you call it destiny because choice sounds too ugly. So I will leave you with this. If someone cheats because they feel lonely, does that make them easier to understand? Or does it only make their selfishness sound sadder? Thank you for listening to this story with me. If it touched you, please don't forget to like this video and follow the channel for more stories like this. And most importantly, leave a comment below with your thoughts, how this story made you feel, and what you would have done in their place.